Welcome to another Maamar we learned today in the Mizgaris of Project Melukat. These Maamarim are learned l'schus, l'nishmas, our beloved Shiur, Rebbe Wagner. The Maamar we learned today is the second Maamar in the Kונטרת of Hachama It's a בהמשך to the earlier Maamar we learned last week. The earlier Maamar was a classic Maamar, Ton Rabbanon, dealing with the difference between our Menukat and the Menukat in the Beis HaMikdash, what exactly Yevanim we're trying to do, and how you fight the Yevanim, and what it means to us today. The Maamar we learned today zooms in a little bit more on the time of lighting menorah, specifically by Shkias Hachama after the sun sets, explaining the idea of klippa and how we elevate klippa, transform klippa, and how everything in our world really has a shirish, really has a source somewhere high in kedusha, and all we have to do is elevate it, illuminate it, and then we can tap into the energy that exists within our creation, and that is really the purpose of creation, and that's the message of Hanukkah. At the end of our Maamar, we're actually going to go back to answer some questions in the first Maamar. The first Maamar was said, Shabbos, Hanukkah, Tafshin Lamed Ches, was Matzi Shabbos. This Maamar is Zois Hanukkah. You might know, Zois Hanukkah, the Rebbe was actually celebrating a Sudas Heidah for the events of Shmini Atzeres. The Rebbe suffered a tremendous heart attack, and now Zois Hanukkah, the Rebbe was celebrating a Sudas Heidah, a special Maamar. A Maamar really tells us what's really the purpose of creating klippa, why did the Rebbe create so many challenges and difficulties, and what it means to us in our life. It might be connected to the era of Tafshin Lamed Ches. I don't know. Let us begin. Mitzvasa, Mishetishka, Hachama. So the earlier Maamar we started with Ton Rabbanon. It was a shtickle Gemara about the way we light menorah. You start with one and you work your way up or down, and depending on if you're connected to the oxes of Sukkot or not. This is the next shtickle Gemara where we deal with the time of lighting. When exactly do we light? And the Gemara says the time of lighting begins with Shkias Hachama and goes until Tichla Regan Rashuk, when people stop hanging out in the marketplace. And the simple reason for this is because Persumei Nisa, the purpose of lighting menorah, one of the reasons is to spread the miracle. As long as you have people hanging out outside, they're able to see and celebrate with you. And then the Gemara zooms in a little bit more. What exactly do we mean? Who has to not be hanging out in the shuk? And the Gemara explains, Ad de Kalye Rigel Tarmudoi, we wait to conclude the Rigel, the feet of the people of Tarmudoi, the Tarmudoi nation, when they stop hanging out in the marketplace. And it actually explains the Tarmudoi were a nation who their occupation was they would chop wood, therefore they would stick around the latest, people would go home, realize that they are lacking fuel to fuel their ovens and their furnaces and their fireplaces, and therefore people would have to come back and restock, buy more, therefore they were, so to speak, the last people hanging out in the marketplace later than everyone else, and therefore that is the time of lighting menorah from Shkias Hachama, from sunset until these, right? How do you know you're done, so to speak, lighting menorah? That the Maamar is going to explain when you manage to do Kalya Rigel Tarmudoi. Now, there are different types of candles in mitzvahs. We have the Hanukkah candles, of course, that's our Yom Tiv, and then we have the Neres HaMikdash, the Menukat in the Beis HaMikdash, as well as Neres Shabbos that we do every week. There's a difference is Neres HaMikdash and Neres Shabbos, the two other candles, the time we light the Shabbos candles as well as the Menukat in the Beis HaMikdash, it was still light outside. The candles were lit in the Beis HaMikdash all night, but the time that they were illuminated was at an hour and a quarter before Shkias Hachama, was still light outside. As well as Shabbos, obviously you're not allowed to light a candle on Shabbos, it has to be lit before Shabbos. The bottom line is the two candles, the Beis HaMikdash menorah as well as the Shabbos candles, are lit when it is still light outside. Mitzvasa, our menorah, the mitzvah is to light it specifically when the sun sets already, it's dark outside. Rebbe says, what's really the question here? We are lighting our menorah to commemorate the menorah of the Beis HaMikdash. You would think, typically, if I'm trying to commemorate something, I should do it similar to the way it was done in its original form. The Neres HaMikdash were done before Shkia. We should light our menorah before Shkia. Ubefrat, and specifically the we have a rule, whenever our sages establish a new mitzvah or a minig, they try to make it as similar as possible to the original, to something that you can find in Torah. So if we're lighting a menorah connected to the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, we should do it at the same time. Nevertheless, no. And what's the beer? You do a beer, but they're going to say the Nekudas Havart, which is explained in the Maamar. Mishetishka, Achama, koyal zman galus. The idea of sunset is galus. Nikra b'shem choshech, galus is darkness. Hasiba l'choshech galus choshech haruchni. What brings about the darkness of galus is the spiritual darkness. In achatoim, shem hebech ner mitzvah tera'er, the sin of a person, which is the opposite of a mitzvah, which is called tera'er, ner mitzvah, right? A ner, a candle, light is mitzvahs. Like we say in the Nusach Tefillah and Musaf of Yom Tiv, that the reason why we were exiled because of our sin. So sin is darkness, that's the sunset, that's Galus. That's the whole point here. Why? We light the candles of Hanukkah, specifically after the sun sets. The purpose of Hanukkah candles is to illuminate the darkness of Galus. And now that I was going to say, historically speaking, even though technically speaking, the time of the Hanukkah menorah, the story was when the Beit HaMikdash was still around, so it wasn't, so to speak, Galus. Nevertheless, Nikr Gamkem Shem Galus. It's still called Galus, the time of the Hanukkah story. Galus Yavan was called the Greek Galus, or Syrian Greeks. And especially that time, leading up to the war, was a time of overwhelming darkness. If you read the Nusach Val Nisim that we say in Shemon Esrei, it describes here the tremendous darkness and tzaris and pain the Jewish people went through. That also explains why the deadline. When do we conclude lighting menorah? That's when people stop hanging out in the marketplace. How come? It brings out the same message here. Just like we begin lighting the menorah at sunset, which represents Galus, this as well represents Galus. Tarmudoi represents people who rebel against the rulership of Hashem. Parentheses, tirmoid oisis miredis. The word tirmoid is the same letters as moiredis, which means rebellious. Vehei misakim bashuk. Where do these rebellious people hang out? In the marketplace. Prinas rishus harametur, the pruda, which is a public domain. We know the difference between a private domain. Rishus hayachid is a place where yichidur shel, a place where the Eibishter's oneness, unity is felt and experienced. Rishus harabim represents the opposite, a place where there is rabim, there's alkim acherim, there's avodah zarah, there's basically a lack of achdos Hashem. Turei de Pruda, the mountains of division or separation. Then what's the purpose of lighting candles after sunset? The purpose is to conclude with, to finish off with the legs, the feet of the Talmudoy nation. And the Rebbe is going to say, Bebeis Pirushim. There are two Pirushim Chassidus. The first Pirush, either we eliminate them, we get rid of them, which that's Kiloyin. And the second pirush is we cause kiloyin, which kiloyin also means to be consumed within the love of Hashem. Kloisa nefesh, we affect them in that profound way. Shegam hamurdim yizbatlu v'yishapchu v'yavoyu kloisa nefesh. Even those who are initially rebellious, first of all, are yizbatlu, they are eliminated. But the second step is v'yishapchu, they are transformed v'yavoyu kloisa nefesh, to the extent that they literally lose their identity within the love of Hashem. And when a person manages to transform klipa, tarmudoi, to take a rebellious person and make him love Hashem, and to the extent of kloisa nefesh, the love is much greater, the kiloyin is much greater, the thirst of a Baal Tshuva whose far is much greater than the thirst of a tzaddik. Where do you find the most intense light, is specifically when transforming darkness? So what do we basically say? Why do we light the menorah after sunset? Sunset is galus. Galus is what menorah is all about. The time of the Hanukkah story was in a time of darkness. When do we know that we fulfilled the purpose of lighting menorah? When did we, so to speak, accomplish our goal? That's when when we managed to, first of all, eliminate those who are against Hashem, but the ultimate goal is not to just get rid of them, but to elevate them, to transform them, to illuminate, to make the darkness itself shine. Now that I was going to say, how is that even possible? How do we take a klippa, how do we take a rebellious person and make him have the greatest love for Hashem? So now he's based it, I was going to explain, because in truth, every aspect of creation, even klippa, has a source in Kedusha, a very high source in Kedusha. And on the contrary, the lower the thing is here in this world, it just shows on how deep its source is on high. The entire concept of creation, every mitzvah, every aspect of our world, even klippa has a atchala, has a beginning, a source, a root in Kedusha. Razal literally tell us, the pasuk says, even those sorcerers which contradict the concept of a higher power of Hashem, right? They are kishiv, they're tumah, even they are included in Ein Blavadei, everything is alkus. Ella, however, there's different ways how things develop from their source into being. Most conventional things, there's their source, and then they develop into whatever they are down here. There are certain things, Chassidus explains, the Rebbe says here in the Maamar, that cannot evolve regularly through a regular systematic process of Ishtalshlus. You're going to have the longest process of evolution, the longest chain. You will never get to this klipa. Kedusha will never produce this. Ki'im. So how does this actually come to exist? If everything began as Kedusha, how does this happen? Ki'im tzarchli is gam hefsek, or tzimtzum, or masach, or shvira. The Rebbe brings 4 terms here, which is typically brought in Chassidus to explain how klipa is created. Either there's a break, there's a split, right? There's Hashem, and then there's some sort of break in some sort of complete concealment before you can create this klipa, or a tzimtzum, which means a contraction, right? A hole, a masach, or a curtain, which is also a block, or shvira, or shviras hakelim. We say when the kelim break, the little shattered pieces fall very low. It's a way of, so to speak, expediting a process which is endless and impossible. When you want to create klipa from Kedusha, the only way to do it is through, making some sort of completely removing the whole prior identity, the prior reality, the reality of Achas Hashem, and now just leaving space for klipa, and that happens through these different methods. Based on that, we could translate back into our context. The Rebbe writes in the brackets, Mishetishka, Hachama, and Shuk, Vitarmidoi, 3 things. First of all, sunset, which is Galus, Shuk, which is Shosarabim, right, the place of division, Tarmidoi, which are rebellion, which are, by the way, 3 levels lower, right? The Galus is the context from within. There's a Shuk, which is a place where these Tarmidoim can thrive. So it's 3 levels. In truth, they all began, their root, their source is in Kedusha. Ella shabayim alei tzimtzum v'hefsik v'chulu v'shvira v'chulu. It comes through a tzimtzum and a hefsik, like we explained. Udugmas in parsha same like par in our parshas Mikhets, the parsha of Chanukah. We begin the story of Jewish people going down to Mitzrayim. That it's explained in Zoyar sheshor shoyu inin achinal b'kedusha. The source of pari is the greatest, highest level of kedusha yidua. Shepari, the word pari, who dispiriu v'izgalin minei kol nahar. Dispiriu means from it comes forth and it shines and reveals all of the great Nahar and all the rivers of Kedusha, the great light of Kedusha. How was Pari created from it? How did the great Russia come out of this whole Ishtalshlus? The great to the extent, the person who the way is described in Tanakh is the great snake or crocodile that's in the river, and says, Li Oiri, I created this river, Vani Sisini, right? He literally completely objects to the whole concept. There's a creator, there's an Eibishter. How did this Pari, this Klipa, come from the greatest, highest level of Kedusha? And the answer is, again, through the Tzimtzum, or through the Hefsik, like we explained. Mizeh, Gufa, Shenafel, Lomata, Kolkach. Now that it takes the next step, the mere fact that it fell so low, Muchach, must mean Shesharshim Chenet Nalas B'Yeser. Because a regular Kedusha doesn't have the koyach to go so low. It only can thrive within the context of Kedusha, or at least, a good, normal, decent, kosher world. The fact that something can become so low, such klipa means, comes from a much greater source. To call it only something so high can go so low. You need a much greater energy for it to come down so low and affect and become what it is. When a person manages to tap into that energy, to elevate, to refine things that are klipa, that are so low, like for example, the fact that we managed to refine pari. How did that happen? First of all, right? It was only the greatest level of Kedusha, the greatest source of Kedusha we know of is Moshe Rabbeinu. With the koyach of Hashem Be'al Pari, we managed to refine and elevate pari. What happens? They are elevated to their source, which is obviously very great and very high. Even more than that, not just do they go back to their source, but they'll go even higher than their source. Because again, if they were just going right back to their source, then seemingly there's no purpose in this process, in this yirida, in this descent. Obviously, the purpose is for aliyah, a ascent which is even greater than its source. So what did Rebbe just tell us? What is the purpose of Shkiyas Achama? What is the purpose of Rigal Tamidoi? What is the purpose of Klipa, of its creation? Indeed, it has a very high source. And when we can elevate it, we can refine it, we can tap into that energy, and then it can be elevated to its source and even higher. Now let's go back to explain the idea of Shkiyas Achama according to Chassidus. Ois Gimel and Ois Dal, we're going to basically explain how the idea where the Chama can be shekeh, the Chama is set, the greatest levels of Kedusha are, so to speak, going down into, right, they're literally disappearing into the, right, into the background, right? The Chama sets, nevertheless, its setting is its purpose because it's able to elevate what's down there in the world. Let's see. Yuvan, Mashemuva be'inyan Mishetishka Hachama Maamar Azar al Pasuk val Mekoymu Yishoyev Zerech Husham. The Zohar explains, the Pasuk says, El Mekoymu Yishoyev Zerech Husham. The sun is shoyef, it's like thriving to its place, it strives to go to its place, and that's where it actually shines. And the Zohar explained, Kaz Azul Shimsha L'mayrav Hai Mayrav Ikra Mekoymu Shimsha. When the sun sets to west, that west actually is called the place of the sun, which is very strange. You would think the place of the sun is in the center of the sky. No, when it sets in the west, that's where it's its place. That's where it really brings out its true identity. That's where it's experienced itself. What does that mean? It's known. Mayrav hu Malchus. Mayrav is the lowest of the 10 spheres, the Eibusher's attribute of rulership, of kingdom. Kamaimer Shechina b'Mayrav, it's the Elikus that's mislabish in creation, the lowest level of Elikus. V'chad ozil shem shel Mayrav hu amshachas v'yirida za shemesh b'Malchus. What does it mean that the sun sets into west? Means Za and Malchus are combined. Za lowers itself down to Malchus. What's Za? Za are the midas of Hashem, right? Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod. And when there's a Yichud, the Mashpia Za goes down into Malchus to give birth to the next Olam, right? This is all within the world of Atzilus. When Za of Atzilus sets, so to speak, into west, into Mayrav, into Malchus, and he loses himself, so to speak. He doesn't set it, he doesn't shine anymore. Ad, like he explains about Malchus, it goes down, it vests itself, so to speak, into Malchus to give birth to the next Olamais. The way Malchus becomes a makar to Biyah, the way Malchus gives birth to Bria Yitzir Asir in the next world, to the extent that Nishkar Atzilus, it seems like Atzilus is being extinguished, the light is going away. Nevertheless, Zakt Rebbe, Alpha became Hai Mayrav Ikrim Mekem Deshimsha. The Zohar tells us this west is the place of the sun. When the sun is able to set and not be seen, nevertheless, that is its real place, because when it can affect Malchus in a way that it actually gives birth to a new Olam, to Bria, and then Yitzir, and then Asiyah, that is its true potential being revealed. Like he explains, that is its real place. Obviously, Zah is higher than Malchus. Nevertheless, the real purpose of the whole Atzilus being created is for Biyah. The real reason why Atzilus was even made is for the lower worlds, for our world that we're in today. You might be going into a lower place, but it's bringing out a much deeper koyach, because that's really the purpose all along. And therefore, that is where it shines. In other words, obviously it doesn't physically shine when it sets, but that's where in Indian Geret it's able to shine, because it's able to accomplish so much. The real zricha, the real shining of the sun, is when it can give birth to Biyah. Why is that? How does it make sense that specifically when the sun goes down to create a lower world than it, Bria Yitzir Asir, which by the way is the first worlds of Yeshus, that is when it's able to shine, and that is when it is experiencing its greatest potential? So the Rebbe says, like explained in Tanya in Perek Lamed Vav, ultimately, if you think about it, the Eibusher is Etzem, is Atzmus, the greatest, highest thing. All the worlds that come from Hashem is all Eirida, obviously. It's never as complete and as great as Hashem. So every world can't be the purpose, because every world is just a Yerida, it's only a descent. There is one exception to the rule, and that's Biyah, that's our world, Bria Yitzir Asiyah. Why? And especially our world, the literally lowest down the physical world, because here, Nasi Zirla is Baruch, here is the Chiddush. Every other world is a godly world, but it's less. So it's just, it's just a chisarn, it's just missing. It's Elikus, but less than the earlier level, so it's just going downhill. Our world is already not Elikus anymore. Our world is Yeshus. Our world is a place where the Eibusher finds a competition, so to speak, is able to work through, make a dir b'tachtoinim. It's a world which doesn't feel Elikus, therefore it's the first world that is actually not necessarily a Yerida from Hashem. In other words, it's a new identity. It's something new. It's not just the earlier version of itself in a lower way. This is something new. It's sheker. It's a lie. And therefore, it's a chiddush. Nasal dir leis baruch. Therefore, the Eibusher finds comfort in this world. He wants us to recognize Hashem. This is, so to speak, the first time the Eibusher has another creation, another being outside of himself, which can recognize himself and make him feel comfortable there. Like it's known when a person resides in a living space, it is with your whole essence, it's where you feel comfortable. This is the only place where the Eibusha can truly feel comfortable. If you think about it, every other olam is not a hosting place for Hashem's atzmus. Because if Hashem is revealed in another world, that world is automatically going to be Nisbatel, is going to be in the presence of Hashem. It will lose its self-identity. Our world is the only world which is so oblivious to Elikus that it literally can host the greatest essence of Hashem, is because of its chisarn, because it's such a world of sheker. Va'ad shekayidua, to the extent we literally, it's known, as Chassidus explains, Yesh hanivra, it's a strange thing. Our world is the only world which we feel that we created ourselves. What do we mean? We don't feel a need to justify our creation. I am here because I am here. I don't know what my source is. Every other world, every other olam, every other level in Elikus knows where it comes from, and it's only here to express its source, the level before it. Our world is the only world which feels that we create ourselves. We don't need to justify our creation. How is that? How come? So Chassidus explains, because there is one more in Elikus which has the same feeling. Atzmus Mahus, the essence of the Eibusha himself, the highest level of God. That is the only level which indeed doesn't need to justify its creation. He created himself. Therefore, the fact that us down here can even have this feeling that we don't need to justify our mitzvahs is because we reflect the greatest, highest level we come from etzem. Oh, now we can get back to the concept. Hanukkah is here to illuminate the sunset. So that's why the concept of Hanukkah is like the sun setting. When you're able to set and you're able to illuminate Biyah, our world, the world of Yeshus, that's when you're able to tap into the greatest, highest Gilui, the idea of Yesh Amiti, the idea of Hashem's essence. That's all step number one. Creation of our world, creation of the separateness of our world, the identity of our world is already the greatest type of Yerida. Now that Rebbe is going to tell us in his Dalit, there's another level in Yerida. There's another step down. Within our world itself, there is the fact that our world feels itself as a separate entity, which is already obviously a Yerida, but then there's Klippa. Klippa don't just feel independent. Klippa feels like they are menaged. They actually negate Hashem. They fight Hashem. They rebel against Hashem. So within Elam Hazagashmi, this is even a lower zricha. This is a lower sunset. So obviously, the Rebbe is going to explain that this sunset creates even a greater energy. So let's see. This next step, the real Tishka Achama, even a lower sense, is the creation of Klippa. Not just the creation of our world, but creation of Klippa, which, again, contradicts Hashem. It's an incomparable sunset in this Eirek Dusha. And just like we explained, anytime something has to go lower, it means it has a higher source. When I can reveal the essence, when I can tap into the energy through this shkia, through getting this low, this sunset, therefore the sunrise afterwards is a much greater sunrise, even greater than the zricha and the regular shkia, the shemesh havayit atzilus, right? In atzilus we said there is the zah setting itself into malchus to create biyah. That is obviously a great yurida for Atzilus to create the next world. But obviously when you're creating Klippa, it's even a greater zricha. And then I was going to say a bracket, so I want to skip it for a moment. We'll get back to it. The Razal teaches us when we can break Sitrach, when you can break Klippa, that is when you bring the Yikar, the purity, the highest, deepest, most precious part of Hashem in all worlds equally. When you have the existence of Sitra Achra, the other side, the peel, the Klippa. Which again is created through the sunset, the greatest type of sunset, Shemesh Shiktusha. Not just the Shemesh of Atzilus, but the whole concept of holiness is being set like sunset. And then you're able to, first of all, bend the Sitra Achra, basically negate it, destroy it. And afterwards, next step, you're able to transform it and elevate it. Through that, you can bring in a much greater, higher type of which is even higher than the whole concept of revelation. Again, where can be revealed? Maybe in the higher elements. In our world, the is so high, it can be revealed. Therefore, the name of this type of Gilu is actually Istalik, which means to leave and not be present, because it's a presence which is higher than the term presence that we relate to. It is much, much greater and higher and deeper than being experienced. And this is indeed how we truly fulfill the Eibusha's taiva of creating our world. and making Hashem come to our world. So we explained in the earlier Oises Dalid, creating our world, that's Hashem's purpose. Now the Rebbe says the real purpose is when you could tap down and elevate the energy of Klippa. And through fulfilling this kavanah, this purpose of Hashem in creating Ra, like Razal teach us, the pasuk says Neira lil ben Adam, which means Hashem, so to speak, and blamed Adam Rishon for the sin. In other words, Hashem ultimately had in mind all along that Adam Rishon should sin with Eitz Hadas, because Hashem wanted Klippa to be created. We know according to Kabbalah, the process of creating our world, the Eibusha had to create many, many more worlds and destroy them first. We have Toyu, which is a much, much greater type of world, but then the Eibusha destroyed that Toyu, and then sparks of it came very, very low into our world, into Klippa, and we could elevate it. The reason why the Eibusha destroyed Toyu is that we now could elevate and utilize the godly energy which is in the lowest places, that is not Nizbarer, it doesn't get elevated through just being from above. You need to really get down there. Can elevate it. And this is how you fulfill Hashem's purpose of Rebbe. Let's go back to the brackets here. The Rebbe said that the Shkia, the sunset of Atzilus going into Biyah, is obviously important, but you can't compare it to the sunset which goes down into Klippa. In other words, the lower the sunset is, the greater the sunrise will be afterwards. So in the brackets here, the Rebbe adds another example here, where if you go one step up, there's another sunset here, which is even higher than Zah going into Malchus of Atzilus. And just like you can't compare Zah going into Atzilus, which creates Yeshus, which creates Biyah, to the higher type of sunset, you can't create the middle type to the lower type. So let's see. The dugmas ha'ilui shebisavas hayesh biyah pratim shkia atzilus hapratis alo ilui disavas biyah klolim shkia atzilus haklolis shebisavas hayesh biyah pratim davkim zgal kech atzilus ubiyah gufa ikar gilu kech atzilus bisavas hayesh gash davka. I read a little bit too much, sorry. Just like we say, there is the four elements atzilus bri yitzir nasiya, right? And in our realm, the pratim, the specific type, we know atzilus is the world of elikus. Biyah is the three worlds of Yeshus, where we already feel our own identity. If you zoom out, Chassidus and Kabbalah explain, there's really four elements as well. There is the Eir and Seif before the Tzimtzum, and that's considered Atzilus. And then there's Adam Kadmoin, there's Kodim Brudim, and then Atzilus, which are basically worlds that are considered Biyah when you zoom out. So Atzilus is the bottom line, just like in the four worlds, the objective is to create our physical world. And when you zoom out, the objective is to create Atzilus, because Atzilus is the first place where there's no Yeshus, there's no identity, there's no self-independence, but there is already a form, right? It is already 10 and not less or not more. So the concept here is that to create the Biyah HaKlolim, the three worlds that come after the Tzimtzum, you also needed to have a Shkia, you needed to have Atzilus. Nevertheless, you can't compare that to the Shkia Hachama of Atzilus going into Malchus. Just like you can't compare even that Shkia to the Shkia of Kedusha that goes into Klippa. So that's just bringing out that point. The greatest sunset brings the greatest sunrise. Therefore, taking it a step further, just like our world being created is the only way Hashem's purpose can be created and be fulfilled, creation of Klippa, one step lower, is how we can fulfill Hashem's will and Hashem's purpose in this world. Very good. So what do we basically explain until this point? Just Shkias Achama, sunset, the greatest sunset brings the greatest sunrise. Now we're going to move on to the deadline when I conclude to light menorah, right? We start with the sunset and we finish when Tichel Regel Ashuk, and that's going to be the topic of the continuation of our Maamar. That's the meaning. When we say we need to wait until we finish, it's concluded, the Regel, the people who hang out in the Shuk, but specifically their legs. Pirush Aleph, there are two Pirushim. First Pirush is Shrinim Kedusha. This is actually all in the realm of Kedusha. Shoik, what does it mean? The marketplace is like Shoik of Amudi Sheish. We say in the pasuk regarding the Eibishter's thighs are pillars of marble. And what does this represent? The Eibishter had a taiva to create our world. Regel. So Shoik is a very holy concept. It's Hashem's passion, Hashem's will to create our world, Hashem's purpose. Regel min Hashuku, in Gimel Regalim. What is the regel? The regel is the three regalim, the three yamim tovim, darga chinaz b'kedusha, which is the way a yid experiences the Eibishter. Like Razal teach us, Kishem Shabaliris, Kach Balirois, Kishem Shabalirois, Kach Baliris. A person came to the Beis Hamikdash to see Elikus as well as to be seen by the Eibishter, so to speak. The shuk is the Eibishter's purpose. The Gimel Regalim, that is the way a person experiences Elikus. In other words, the entire Tichle Regel and Ashuk, the reason why we light menorah is all in the realm of Kedusha. It's a very high level to experience godliness, experience Hashem. Pirush Abezu. The second pirush is a polar opposite, in the opposite extreme. Shuk, like we already said, Shuk is a marketplace, it's in the public domain. The public domain represents division and separation, the opposite of Achdus Hashem. Va'ad, to the extent of Shuk Zeh, within the context of this separation, thrives. These people, you have people who utilize the separation to be murdered, to rebel against the Eibish's rulership. Right? The word Talmud, like we already said, is the same letters as meredes, which means to rebel. What does it mean? The legs, the lowest part. Not just do we have these murdim, these rebellions, but they're actually growing, they're developing, they're always moving. Regel means to travel and to move. Regel means you're walking. It all comes out of the shuk, through the shuk, within the shuk. A shuk is a place where klipa feels comfortable, can thrive, can grow. How do you connect two such radically different pirushim? Either we like menorah, the idea of Tichle Regel and Ashuk is the greatest, highest level representing Hashem's will and creation, Hashem's purpose. Or it means klipa and Rishus Rabbin. Sagt Rebbe, no, that's the whole Nikudah here. Not just how they connected. The reason why the Eibishter even wanted, what was this shukah, what was this will, this meaning the Eibishter found within creation, which is the first pirush, Hashem wanted this world to feel comfortable within a world which is tachtin, which is low, which is distant, which feels independent. In a place which is the lowest of the low in the context of Hashem's achdus being revealed, which is the shuk. So again, Pirush Aleph flows perfectly into Pirush Beis. The Eibishter wanted, therefore he created a shuk. Therefore, we know the Rebbe says Nasa Adam, which gives room for a place to make a mistake. Nasa means let's make, as if there's more than one entity on high. And when the Rebbe said that, he was actually giving place for bchira, for a person to make a mistake, that there is more than one entity. That gave art, that gave the ability for eventually a Rishus Rabbim, a place of division, should be developed. Pirush Habeis B'Shuk, which is the second Pirush in Shuk. It gives the ability for a person to make a mistake. That is the lashon of Rashi, of the Medrash on this pasuk, that anyone who wants to make a mistake, that the Eibishter literally used a whole team, so to speak, of malachim to create a human being. The reason why this is so important, if you want a person to have free choice, you need to be a place to mistaken. Hashem doesn't want a perfect world. Hashem doesn't need angels. Hashem has all the spiritual realms for that. He created our world because He wants to be concealed. He wants you to discover Hashem. Therefore, there needs to be a place like a shuk, a place of Alma de Pruda, where you can make a mistake. Only through the fact that the whole way the world was originally created was in a way that a person can make a mistake in Rishus Rabbim. We take the public domain, we make it into a private place, we make it into Rishus Yachid where the Yishchida Shel Elam, the Eibish's unity and glory, can shine and thrive. Through the second beer, we're able to complete the first beer. Through making this world a place where there is room for mistake, a place where there is division, and there we find Hashem's oneness, we reveal Hashem's oneness, we make the Rishus Rabbim, Rishus Yachid. That is how the Eibishter's Eibishter's will in creation is fulfilled. Now the Rebbe is going to tell us in his Vav, what exactly is the idea here? What does the Eibishter want? After there should be a low world, and that low world should be elevated. What's the purpose? What's the reason? Why is this causing the Eibishter the greatest nachas ruach, the greatest tainug, the greatest pleasure? Hine Hatainuk Chukka Shalamaylo Shadam Abel Shukka Shalabim to the Produce Yach the Sapashech on the hero who Tainu Yachin Ale. The tainug in a person transforming the shuk, taking the public domain, making it private, taking darkness, making it light is the greatest type of pleasure. Kidua. It's known the concept of laughter. What causes somebody to laugh? Brackets, specifically tainug that comes from something new, a novelty. Right? The tainig of tzchoik, why does someone laugh? Because he wasn't expecting the punchline, right? It's like something that doesn't really make sense, and therefore it's merit you to laugh. The Eibish's greatest pleasure comes from this chiddush, this novelty. Shu tainug godel yeser shat tainug shabelim. The greatest tainug is tzchoik, is laughter, is chiddush. Shleimar, the Rebbe is going to explain, according to this one understanding, Maamar Azal, the Masham call him Alam, and Ben Amser Tera, I feel like Baruch Hu Gezik Zerim Vatl, Bishvila Shenemar, Vim Teitzi Yakram Izel Kvitiyet. The Gemara says, anybody who takes the son of Amoritz, teaches him Torah, the Eibishter is going to be Mevatel Gzeira for you. Even the Eibishter made a Gzeira, made a decree. Made a decree for you, he's going to be Mevatel it. Shenemar vim toitzi yoker mizel kafiti. If a person extracts, takes preciousness or purity out of zoilel, which is the opposite, which is disgrace, that is when it will be. The fact that a tzaddik typically has the ability to nullify Hashem's decree. The reason why a tzaddik bichlal has the ability to, override Hashem's gzeira is only because Hashem enjoys it. If Hashem wouldn't enjoy it, it wouldn't be possible to do. Which is similar to what the tzaddik is doing here by taking the son of Amoritz and teaching him Torah, like we'll explain. There's a famous story in the Gemara where there was an argument in the Beis Medrash, and one of the Talmidei Chachamim said, a Basker will come and say that the Allah is like me, or miracles will happen, the river will flow the other way. And the bottom line was, they didn't accept it. Why? Even though the Eibusher, so to speak, announced and said Allah is like this Yachid, like this single person, nevertheless they didn't accept it. Later on, the Gemara says, one of the Tanaim were approached by Eliyahu Navi and asks, what was the Eibusher doing at this point? Can you imagine, the Eibusher paskins, there's a Basker, and nevertheless we don't accept it. You would think the Eibusher maybe would be a little disappointed. Eliyahu Navi responded and said, the Eibusher was laughing. My children have overridden me, my children won me. In other words, when you can win the Eibusher, so to speak, when you can do a chiddush, a novelty, that's what causes the greatest nachas ruach in Hashem. The greatest pleasure, the Eibusher's laughter, happens when a yid can override the rules that the Eibusher instills within creation. And just like it is in the realm of halacha, that what? They didn't let the Eibusher pass in halacha. We are going to follow our rules, even though it is, so to speak, overriding Hashem's rules. So too, that's how the way of the world, just like the way it is in Torah, so too in the Eibusher's gzeirus. Hashem makes a certain gzeira. Nevertheless, Hashem loves when we can break Hashem's rules, break Hashem's gzeirus. Valderech, the Rebbe brings out Maamar Azal, the pasuk says regarding Kiddush HaChodesh that it is in the hands of Bezdin. We are the ones who determine if it is indeed a new month. Even if we do the wrong day by mistake, and even if on purpose the Bezdin for whatever reason decides that another day will be Rosh Chodesh, that is the day of Rosh Chodesh. In other words, the Eibusher, so to speak, doesn't have a say in the matter. Even if the Jewish people will sanctify the month, Mekadosh the Chodesh, right? In contrast to what Torah would say, nevertheless, it's Halik. All the Yom Tov will be celebrated based on that new Rosh Chodesh that the Bezin made. Nevertheless, the Eibusher says, I, with my entire entourage, are going to come down to see what did the Bezin down here paskin. What's the bottom line? The Eibusher has pleasure when we can override his rules, when we can win him, so to speak. And that's the concept here. When a person takes a ben Amoritz, which is supposed to stay Amoritz according to the basic rules, and nevertheless teach him Torah. Yeah, that's when you take the preciousness out of the disgrace. The Eibusher has tainug from bir anitzais. What bir anitzais we explained is godly energy in every aspect of creation. When we can utilize it, when you can tap into it, you can elevate it. That is basically the idea of lahitzi yakar mizelo, to take preciousness out of the disgrace, to take godly energy out of our world. This person who manages to teach Torah, even the person who naturally is the son of Maamar, it's all of Baruch Shneur. This is the concept, this is the whole idea of the Eibusher making a decree, and it's tzaddik being mevatel it. A yid has the ability to nullify the decree. How come? Because of the tainig and tzchoik. So again, just like the Eibusher, when the Eibusher derives pleasure from us overriding his rules, so too when you're going to teach a Ben Amar's Torah, you're going to break those rules. The Eibusher, even if he made a decree for you, he will break that decree, because that's what Tainug and Shemayim does. When the Eibusher has his pleasure from breaking rules, the Eibusher breaks the rules, we break the rules. So what we basically said here in this ois is the reason why Hashem created this whole concept where this idea of Hachama, this this idea of elevating and utilizing the energy of the lowest of the low of Klippa, is because the Eibusher loves the chiddush, the novelty, and taking something which naturally isn't gravitating towards Elikus and convince it and elevate it and transform it. When you take the public domain, you make it into Shusay Yochid. Now, the Rebbe is going to tell us in Ezayin. What did we just say? We just explained the whole reason why Hashem even created Klippa. The whole reason why the Eibusher even made this concept of Klippa is that we should be able to elevate it and utilize it. Right? Why are we telling this to Yid? Why is it so important for you to know this? And the answer is because this gives you a geschmack in Avodas Hashem. Now all of a sudden you know that the galus and the limitations and the confinements and the challenges are not here to punish you, chas v'shalom. They're here to bring out the best in you. And that's what Zayin. The whole purpose of the whole purpose of Hashem concealing himself is that a Yid should have free choice. This gives a Yid koyach, that he shouldn't be nispal, you shouldn't be affected negatively when you see that the world is full of klipa and sitachra. We see a mitzvah shal shuk, we see Rosh Hashanah, we see division. We see that there are not just rebellious people, but those rebels are thriving, they're hilchim boy. Why shouldn't a Yid be nispoil? Why shouldn't he be affected? Because the whole purpose, the whole reason why Hashem made it is because it's for the sole purpose of you overriding it, you overcoming it. Like the Baal Shem Tov brings, and the Alter Rebbe brings this in if there's a person davening, and across this person there's a goy which is speaking loudly and is disturbing his davening, and this itself has aroused within you to daven with more kavanah. Why? Because when you're going to be mizboinen, Dr. Rebbe, shechayusay shel anochri hu davar dvar avai v'ruach pivis baruch Chaim haba yisi b'shaz hu gufik v'medab b'dibur m'balbus kavanas atfil. You have to remember, recognize, realize that this guy at this moment doesn't really exist. The only way he exists is because there's godly energy which is giving him his basic lifeline, his basic vitality. Kumtois. Why in the world do you think the Eibusher would give chayis to a person who's trying to disturb davening? That it's for a good reason. To the extent the Eibusher is within him, the Eibusher is within his words. These are the Eibusher's words, just exiled there. If the Eibusher is in this guy, giving this guy chayis, in the words of this guy, it's for a good purpose. It's for you to be ma'or yourself, to awaken yourself to a greater and deeper kavanah, to override this guy's distractions. Nowadays, so when you have that understanding, you recognize what's really going on over here, that is going to bring out the deepest, greatest kavanah. That what? Not just that you ignore him to the extent you daven exactly how you would have davened without this guy. No, that's not enough. If so, then the guy being there is a waste of space, right? If you're going to just completely distract him. Hello, you say to Mizu, more than that. The distraction itself creates a greater awakening. Because the godly energy which is in this guy, like we already explained, they fall so low. They don't just fall into a human being which is independent. They fall into klippa, a person who's trying to distract you, trying to not let you daven to Hashem. Must be they come from a very great, deep, high place. And when you're able to utilize the guy's distraction to help your Avodas Hashem, so you're elevating him. When you're able to elevate him, you're able to take out the preciousness from the disgrace, then what happens? You reveal their essence, the source of this guy, that it's really much, much higher. It's an amazing thing. And then you derive the benefit, you actually end up benefiting from this great source, this high level of Kedusha, which is in this guy right now, being Mechaim. The Rebbe says an amazing thing. When you could stop and call it for what it is, when you could recognize that in truth, the entire Klippa, the entire Elam Haza, the Shkiyas Hachama, the Rigla, the rebellious, it's all here for you to override them. The way you utilize them for Kedusha is by letting them make your Avodas Hashem greater. Make your Avodas Hashem on a higher level, higher quality. That you are elevating them. All of a sudden, they don't have a purpose anymore. So their chayis, their shayrish is being revealed. All of a sudden, they're not klippa anymore. They are an opportunity for you to serve the Eibusher better. So you basically revealed their source, and nothing is really klippa. Nothing is really a contradiction to Hashem. So you basically did the avodah of elevating klippa, utilizing klippa, and showing how it really has a deep and high source. Klippa is able to help you serve the Eibusher. Frat in the brackets, we explained all the way in the beginning that we don't say that the elevation, right, the ascent that comes after the Yerida is back to its source. If so, there will be no reason for the Yerida altogether. It must be even higher. So too, the sparks of Toyu, when they are elevated, even higher than their source. Now that Rebbe said something very interesting. What does it mean to be higher than Gavoya b'yoser? We say call a Gavoya b'yoser, you're l'mat yoser. The highest things go in the lowest places. How can you be higher than Gavoya b'yoser, higher than the highest? So what's the answer? Yishleimer, Shali Yosam, Hula Mailo, Gam in the Gavoya b'yoser. It's higher than even very high. What do we mean? Because again, what are you accomplishing through elevating the sparks? It's not just another beautiful thing you're doing. You're actually fulfilling Hashem's purpose. Hashem is etzem. The Eibusher's atzmus is a taiva to utilize and to elevate the lowest things. You're tapping into the atzmus. You're tapping into the greatest essence of Hashem. Now, when you tap into Hashem's purpose in creation, that's higher than high. It's higher than low. It's Hashem's essence. It's higher than any rules. So you're going higher than even high. There is a world where there's high and there's low and there's rules and there's a setting, right? The way the Eibusher set it up. Then you could tap into something much deeper. Etzem. Etzem is the Eibusher's essence, higher than the rule. The Eibusher created the rule. For the Eibusher, high is not high, low is not low. It's all one. You're reaching a place which is higher, right? So the sparks that come from a very high place go into Klippa. When you elevate it, you're not just bringing it back to a high place, you're making it a part of Hashem's Atzmus's purpose, which is higher than high and low. Similar to what we said. Not just are you getting rid of the murdim, getting rid of the rebellions, you make them lose themselves within the Eibusher through utilizing their energy, their essence, their godly sparks, and you elevate them to their source and higher. Now the Rebbe is going to go back to say, now we can understand the two pirushim in Rigla Tamidoi. We already said there are two pirushim in. First, we said there are two pirushim in shuk, right? And then we said there are two pirushim in regel. There's the regel of kedusha, which is the gimel regalim, the three legs, which are the three yamim tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, which is a time that Jewish people would experience Holocaust. And then you have the two legs of the Talmudim. The Rebbe says there's a difference between the two and the three over here. What? How do we get rid of the regel of l'umazah? How do we get rid of the legs, the feet, the mahalach, the fact that there's developing, growing klippa? It's through the gimel regalim. What do we mean? Very geschmackin. Toyu and tikkun. Toyu is higher, tikkun is lower. Toyu is chaos, tikkun is more systematic and more organized. But when they come down, Toyu, because it's a much higher place, it comes to a much lower place. So klippa comes from Toyu, Gashmis comes from Toyu. Tikkun is ruchnis, tikkun is kedusha. It's more systematic, it's more developed, it's more of an organized, so to speak, like a mature adult. Toyu is more like a wild child. Zakter, what's the difference between Toyu and tikkun? In other words, what's the difference between kedusha and klippa? Shevet Toyu or asfiris b'chinas beis kavim, tikkun b'chinas gimel kavim. What did tikkun create? How did Tikkun all of a sudden become a organized, calm, relaxed place? The answer is because in Toyu there were two kavim. Two kavim means there was chesed and gvura. There was Hachama and bina. In other words, everything was either or. When you have either or, it gets a lot of friction, a lot of excitement, right? Everything's extremes. And that's the world of Toyu, the world of midos, where in emotions, everything's extreme. I want this, I want that. Like a child who doesn't have a mind, it doesn't have the maturity to sort things out. In Toyu, everything's beis kavim, two kavim, it's all either or, it's a very intense place. Tikkun, on the other hand, when you have a world of organization, all of a sudden there's a third kav. What does the third kav create? It can combine two. It can say a little bit of chesed, a little bit of gvura. Sometimes I need to be kind, sometimes, right? In other words, it brings in that level of maturity where it's not so intense, it's not so insane. It's not everything's extremes. There's a middle path as well. What do I do? I take the sparks from Toyu, from this high world, which is two kavim, the extreme crazy world. When I elevate it to Tikkun, right down here in our world, Toyu is lower than Tikkun because Toyu gets lower. When I elevate the two legs, which is the regel of the shuk, I bring it into the three legs, which is shal shagalim. It's taking the two, bringing it to the three, taking the Toyu and bringing it into the Tikkun. That's how you elevate. Which is kedusha, which is the three legs. So the two legs is klippa, the three legs is kedusha. What does this mean, practically speaking? What does it mean to take the klippa and bring it into the three legs? What are the three legs in our avodah? It's the gimel amudim shaleim, the three pillars that the world stands upon. This is the human who's a small world. The pasuk says, right, a person is a world. So your world, your life stands on three pillars, as well as Amidas Klalos Ha'olam, the general world, as well stands on three pillars. This literal, physical, low world. There are three pillars that our world stands on, all world stands on, the whole world, the whole ishtalshus, all is established and stands on these three pillars. And when a person invests in kedusha, in Torah, this is how he elevates the sparks. This is the three. Right? Like it says regarding Yaakov, that the whole world, the whole world stands on the pillars of Torah Vedic Mos Chasadim, which means the whole world stands on a Yid's Avodah. Like it says regarding Yaakov, V'hini Hashem Nitzav, the Eibishter, the Eibishter is reliant on him. The Eibishter depends on him. The whole world stands on a Yid's Avodah. Torah Vedic Mos Chasadim. V'amar Azal Tzadikim Alikim Miskayim Malim. Their God, so to speak, is established upon them, relies upon them. How do we establish Alikus? How do we make the Eibishter? How do we, so to speak, ground Hashem, give the Eibishter a feet space in our world? Through a Yid. The Eibishter needs us, so to speak, when we do Avodah. When we do Avodah, and specifically Avodah in Galus, through the three kavim, the three legs of Torah Vedic Mos Chasadim, we are first of all establishing the world, establishing all the worlds, and letting a likus thrive within the world. Through the Gimel Kavim, we are elevating Klippa and giving the Eibishter a space to feel comfortable and dear b'tachtonim. And that's the nekuda, the kesher between the two pirushim of the two legs and the three legs, through the three regalim, the three amudim. This is how we establish a safe space for Hashem to exist within our world. The Rebbe says specifically in the time of Golus, through Golus, when you can transform darkness, that's when you bring the Eibishter, because again, it's the lowest part. You're bringing the highest, greatest energy of the Eibishter's essence. And then the Rebbe concludes with something very beautiful. It doesn't mean you have to do such difficult, hard work. The Rambam says it could be one mitzvah. Right? Specifically when we're in Golus, we have to envision the world as an equal scale. Even one thought, one speech, one action is what can tip the scale and bring the Eibishter's presence in a permanent way here in our world. Oistes. Now the Rebbe is going to go back to answer the original questions of the first Maamar, of the earlier Maamar, the Maamar Tanrabanan, where we asked, why did we compare the 8 days of Chanukah to the 8 oxes that were performed on Sukkot? Right? In the Rabbeim's Maamarim, we explain at length how the 8 days of Chanukah are connected to the 8 days of Sukkot. Now we'll understand the combination, the connection. Why? Kikmoy shebchag Sukkos poilim shiyu halu Hashem kol goyim shabchu kol umim ki gavar leinu chazde. Sukkos is a Yom Tif where we primarily focus on perfecting and affecting the world around us, the nations. We have 70 oxen, right? These 70 oxen are connected to 70 nations. And the kapitel which is said regarding Sukkos is Haluz Hashem Kol Goyim, all the nations glorify the Eibusher, Shabchu Kol Umim, they praise him, all the nations, Ki Gavar Leinu Chazde, because the Eibusher's chesed overrides upon us, upon the Yidden. When they see the Eibusher's chesed overriding upon Jewish people, that's when they glorify the Eibusher, they praise the Eibusher. The way the Rebbe's taishuk here is when there's a govar, when there's tigboira, when there's an overwhelming empowerment of chesed, of love of Hashem upon the Jewish people, that also extends itself to the nations. Now the Rebbe says, Al Derech said, the same concept, same idea is found in Hanukkah, that we affect the world around us. In other words, we have two Yom Tovim, which the primary goal and focus is on the nations, is on the darkness, on the world, on the Golus. Like we already explained, the whole chiddush here of Hanukkah is, when did you conclude the time of Hanukkah? When do you know that you lit the menorah properly? That's when you can either first eliminate or elevate, transform, create kiloyin, klois hanefesh, complete consumption of the nations, and not just the nations, the goyim, but those who are rebelling against Hashem feel that intense love of Hashem. There's a difference here. Sukkos, the makifim, the gover leinu chaze is in a very revealed sense. Hanukkah was it wasn't a miracle that happened in a lit time. It wasn't a miracle that happened in an illuminated time. It was a miracle that we needed to fight a war. There were challenges. Rebbe's going to say something very interesting. Ultimately, when Hanukkah begins, it's already a peaceful time. Because the Alter Rebbe answers the question, famous question. The Alter Rebbe's chiddush is that really Chav Dalet Kislev is when we concluded the war. Chav Kislev was already a peaceful day, similar to Sukkot, which is a peaceful time when the Eibusher's chesed, the Eibusher's kindness is revealed, the makiv, like in the Sukkah. The Zewa Pirush, the Chanukah, Chanucha. That's why the Rebbe says in the brackets here, the word Chanukah is Chanucha. They rested on the 25th day. There was already peace. What did they do afterwards? They started to decipher and clean and reconstruct the Beis Hamikdash, and that's when they lit the candles. In other words, Chanukah itself is a very calm and peaceful Yom Tov. It's after the wars that were completed before us, behind us, till we have the ability to thank the Eibusher, to praise the Eibusher's great name, like in the Pesach Maamar we explained the greatness of Hashem's name, Shmei HaGadol. Now the Rebbe is going to continue to draw the comparison between Sukkos and Hanukkah. Just like in Sukkos, there are two joys that are working simultaneously. First of all, Al Shem Beis Asmachis. First of all, Yismach Havai b'Maisav v'Yismach Yisrael b'Osav. There's the Eibusher's joy in us, in His creation, in us, and there's the Jewish people's joy in our Maisim, in our actions. Obviously, ultimately, both Yismachs are Lashon Asid. Obviously, the ultimate joy when we can celebrate with our relation with Hashem, and Hashem can celebrate with us, is when Mashiach comes. The Rebbe says, nevertheless, even now it's called the double joy, the time of our joy. Move on. Already today, the both joys. We call it Chag Simchas means the joys are already in a revealed sense. So too in Chanukah, when we are, so to speak, transforming and elevating the nations. Obviously, the ultimate transformation will be when Mashiach comes. It says regarding then the nations will be completely transformed into one single tongue. They will serve the Eibusher in unison. Nevertheless, Taka, you're right, the ultimate simcha, the ultimate transformation will be when the Gula comes. Nevertheless, that's again Machshav Chanukah. It happens today on Sukkot. It happens today on Chanukah. Just like then, physically speaking, in the story of Chanukah, we eliminated the rulership of the wicked Greeks. Obviously, the story of Chanukah wasn't a complete redemption. Gilkus wasn't around. the story of Hanukkah was just one victory in the middle of a long story of oppression. Nevertheless, there was some sort of light, right? There was some sort of revelation. So too is the way we feel about it today. We still feel like Golus, like the original time of Hanukkah. The Gula didn't even begin yet. Nevertheless, through every person's actions, we say echod va'achas, which is every man and woman, because the women as well are chayiv in the mitzvahs of Hanukkah, because they as well were included in the miracle. B'meshech zman hagolus, throughout the time of Golus, ubefrat. Not just any avodah in Golus, specifically the avodah which is more apparent today, which is the idea of Chanukah, is literally the essence of what our avodah in Golus is all about. It's lighting the menorah in the outside of our home, towards the outside, to transform the outside. This is how we elevate, this is how we transform the legs of the Tarmadoi, like we already explained, the two Pirushim, either we get rid of them or we elevate them, and this happens before the ultimate redemption, just like all the Golisin. Just like we know it happened by the first Geula in Mitzrayim, that even before Jewish people exited, before they experienced the Geula, there's already light in the camps. The Eibusher gives us a little bit of a peak of light even before we actually leave God. By Nasos Mitzrayim, through that light, they had the ability and the clarity to completely utilize Mitzrayim completely. They emptied it out, like a trap that has no more grain left in the beer, and which is in the physical realm, in the Elikus, which is the revealed world. And like a net that has no fish, which is representing the water, which is the hidden world, basically elevating all the godly energy. Just like it was in the original Geula Pesach. So too it's in all the Geulas, because Pesach is similar to all the Geulas. So too in our Geula, in the moments preceding, the moments before the Geula, every Jew has the light in his camps. We take of me out the Geula, and then after that, not just after, but in the moment, take a miyad speedily. That's when we will have the ultimate completion of the the complete transformation of the rebellions and all those who deny the Eibusher's oneness. Yud, last and final ois. And through our actions, we bring closer the Gula even quicker. It's like in the Rambam. The one mitzvah gives salvation to the entire world. Especially when we get involved in things which are a taste of the Gula, like learning Chassidus, which was revealed specifically in the latest generations as a preparation for Gula. The Gula Talmud of the Maisa, when that limud, that learning, actually translated into practical action, and that gives you passion and hidur and beauty in the mitzvahs that we do, to the extent, like the minute pashut regarding Hanukkah, that every single Jew does the mitzvah in its most mehudadik oifen. Right, there's three ways of doing it. There's the basic mitzvah, mahadrin, and all Jewish people on Hanukkah do mahadrin mina mahadrin, that we start with one candle, we always add through this, through taking Chassidus seriously, through letting it penetrate our avodas Hashem, through doing mitzvahs properly, through the yisaidus and the passion and the chayes that Chassidus gives us. This is how we bring the Gula greater and quicker. Very speedily we go to accept the face, to greet Mashiach. Mashiach will teach us Torah, the complete Torah, and that's when as well we will perform the mitzvahs completely. Which is a completion in fulfillment of mitzvahs. The great nation, everyone comes together to the Gula to give thanks to the Eibusher's great name, in the third Beis Hamikdash, in the internal Mikdash. Mikdash was a Mikdash which the Eibusher himself will build. Maybe speeding our time. So what do we basically say in our Maamar? In our Maamar, we focus on Shkias Hachama. Why is lighting the menorah from sunset until Kali Rigal Talmudoyim? And we said there are three steps here. Shkias Hachama represents Golus, the creation of Elam Hazagashmi through Zog going into Atzilus, or the creation of Klippa, which is the greatest sunset, which brings to the greatest sunrise. When do we know we completed menorah? When Kali Rigal Talmudoyim, when we're able to elevate not just our world, but literally Klippa of Sitra Achra, Talmudoyim, are those who rebel against Hashem? Where do they thrive? Where are their regular mahalchim in the shuk, in the place of pirud? When we can transform the moirid, when we can transform the rebels, when we can make the shuk, make the shusram and the shusayachid, we're able to tap into the source of all this klippa, the greatest, highest energy, and we're able to fulfill Hashem's will, which is even higher than high, higher than Gavay B'Yoser, which is Hashem's purpose in creation, to make this world, this low world, into a place where the Eibusher is comfortable. Have a freilichen Chanukah.